ACC, the board meeting for January, and also welcoming all the members of the public, the staff of ACC who are joining us, volunteers, members of the rescue community who are joining us. As many of you know, but just in case if you're new to our organization, first time attending the meeting, ACC is the largest provider of animal welfare services in New York City. We're a 501c3 not-for-profit organization with a contract with the City of New York to provide animal-related services to the 9 million residents of New York City. We are an open admission shelter. That means we don't turn away any animals at our doors. Every animal comes into ACC that comes to ACC. On average, we care for about 20,000 animals a year. And Risa will touch on this in her report. It's not just cats and dogs. And we see about 50 to 60 animals per day. In addition, ACC, I'm really proud of this part of our services. We're out in the communities of New York. We're running medical clinics. We're holding behavior training sessions. We have mobile adoption events. We're providing food and food pantries. We're working really hard to try to keep New Yorkers together with the animals they love. That's part of our mission. And that is a way to end animal homelessness in New York City, which is our goal. Rescue, care, place, and support. That's what we're all about. So today is the meeting of our board. We're a board of 13 members. 10 of us are fully volunteers. We are doing this as volunteers. 3 of us are ex officio representatives of city government, very important part of our board. I'll mention them in a bit. But the 10 of us who are volunteers, 6 of us are appointed by the mayor, and 4 of us are board appointees. I bring this up because we do have 2 vacancies at the moment on our board. Both Linda Chin and David Glicksman decided to resign in the second half of 2021. So we have 2 openings, and we're actively recruiting and looking for great people who are passionate about our mission, who want to serve with us here on the board. I did mention we have 3 ex officio members. Those are full-time city government people who represent the departments of health, parks, and police. I was hoping this morning that we'd be able to introduce our new representative from police, Adrian Ashby, who's the lieutenant commander of the Animal Cruelty Investigation Squad. He's someone that our team knows really well and works very closely with, so we're very excited to have him joining our board. But unfortunately, due to the sad tragedy of the 2 officers who died, who fell in service earlier this week, he's attending one of the services for Officer Jason Rivera, so he can't join us this morning. He might be able to join later, but I don't think we'll have a chance to meet him this time, but he's excited to be joining, and we're really happy to have him. The board meeting, we have some board business to attend to today, which will be our first order of business. Then we'll hear from Jeff at Kiwi on our financials. We'll have an operating report from Risa Weinstock, our CEO. We'll have a capital improvements updates from Mario Merlino at DOH. And then we'll have the public comment session. And as I was saying at the beginning of the meeting, we're going to ask for you to sign up to speak or to put your questions in the chat near the end. So basically when Mario is presenting, don't stop listening to him. He has great news and updates for us, but that would be the time to put your questions in the chat. Before we move to board business, I also wanted to, in this time of pandemic, to make a special thanks and appreciation on behalf of all the board for the entire staff and volunteers at ACC. We all see Risa and her team and all of you who are working to take care of the animals of New York as true heroes, especially during this time. There's nothing easy about it. Your work is selfless, courageous. Your dedication is inspiring and unrelenting. And we know you're exhausted and it's hard, and we just wanted to acknowledge that and let you know how much we appreciate it and how much the city needs you. And I think all of us who are working with ACC and coming into the shelters need to remember that. Make sure you're vaccinated, make sure you're masked, and be kind to everybody. Thanks. And now I think we'll get on to our board business. Okay, standard board business. In January of each year, we elect a slate of officers, and we also announce our committees. And we also, at every meeting, need to approve the minutes. We've all received the board minutes from our last meeting in June. May I have a motion to approve those minutes? I see hands raised. All approving? I think hands are the best way to do this. Thank you. The minutes of the June meeting are approved. We now have a slate of officers to elect. We are looking to have me continue in the chair position, Denise as vice chair, Jay as secretary, and Elaine as treasurer. May I have a motion to approve that slate of officers? See hands raised, and a vote of approval. Okay, the officers are elected for the coming year. And in terms of committees, the executive committee will be chaired by me, and the members are Denise, Jonathan, Karen, Elaine, and Corinne. Our nominating committee will be chaired by Denise, and the members are Corinne, Neil, Sarah, myself, and Karen. And Corinne, I think I mentioned Corinne. Our audit committee will be chaired by me, and the members are Jonathan and Elaine. Our development committee will be chaired by Dennis, and the members are myself and Jay. And we are activating our Queens Capital Committee. It had been dormant this past year. Jonathan is our chair. I'm on that committee, and Sarah is joining that committee. I think now we're ready to get our financial update from Jeff Hauser at Kiwi. Over to you, Jeff. Thanks.
Good morning. Can you put the slides up on the screen so everyone can see it? Thank you. So we're going to follow a similar format to the finance presentation of the last few meetings. So the agenda is going to include the general financial statements, followed by a summary of where we are with development revenue for the year. So we're going to follow, again, a similar format you should find familiar. Next slide, please. So since this is the January meeting, we thought that the best place to start would be to talk about the financials through the latest closing period, which was December, which symmetrically happens to be nice. It's the half-year point. So what you are looking at is a comparison for the 6 months ended December. Actual is that first column to the left. Budget is the second column from the left. And then prior year this time, which is the one that's in blue all the way to the right. And I present here variances versus budget and variances versus prior year. So for the first 6 months of 2021, ACC's total net assets increased by about 871,000. That's that bottom line that you see in that first column. GAAP requires that we separate changes in net assets that are unrestricted versus total or restricted. So we do that, and that's why you'll see that there are 2 rows. But in total, the net assets went up by about 870,000 for the first 6 months. The budget had contemplated that net assets would increase by about $2 million over that same period. So the 871 in comparison to 2 million. The biggest reason for that variance is that when the budget was contemplated, it had included $3 million annualized, or $1.5 million over 6 months, from a $3 million amendment, which at the moment, it can't be sent by ACO to the controller for registration due to what we understand is a lack of funding. Don't know at this point whether or not that is permanent or not. It's unknown at this time when we'll be able to invoice against that amendment. So there may be a point where we're going to have to, as an organization, make some decisions about items that we planned to spend in the second half of the year that we aren't going to be spending in order to make up for that unavailability of funds. But at the moment, this is where we sit actual versus budget. Regarding expenses, for the most part, we are about where we thought we would be, actual versus budget, give or take. Some lines better, some lines a little worse. At this point, I don't think that this means anything very different versus what we planned. So it's going the way we thought it would. Non-DOH revenue is basically the second, third, fourth lines where you see shelter revenue, individual giving, and institutional giving. Altogether, that totals about $1.8 million, a little short of $1.8 million, compared to about $1.4 million in the budget and about $1.7 million in the prior year. One of the issues we have, back to that original comment I made about the restricted versus unrestricted, we did have quite a bit of temporarily restricted contributions on the books last year this time. And so that does skew the numbers a little bit, as in we probably are still under where we were this time prior year when you add those together. We're going to talk a little bit of more detail about that when we get to the development revenue slide in the end. So we are a little bit behind prior year there. I will add personnel services, personnel expenses, I'm sorry. They are mostly in line with budget. However, we continue to be impacted by a few things. There are still some vacancies. We are still experiencing turnover. Probably everybody is. And so we are not immune to that. So we continue to have to expend resources in order to recruit, and we have any comments or questions before I go?
Hey, Jeff,
Yes, good morning.
can you remind us why we budgeted personnel down from last year so much?
Sure. So we actually budgeted about the same. Let me tell you why. We two things that are happening here. We have the shelter operation and the construction. And when we get to the balance sheet, we'll talk about what that means, right? In the second half of the year, we started to have one side of the shelter operation actually charge the construction project for some personnel. And so you may notice when you look at the revenue line, the revenue section, I'm sorry, a thing that's called interest income and other revenue. Do you see that's maybe the last one in that revenue section?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so during the first 6 months, there was about $140,000 of personnel that is being charged from one side to the other, because again, it's work that is being done for the construction, and it's going to end up as an asset. So that 140,000 actually is an offset. So that personnel services, it's really 140,000 overstated compared to budget, only because it's being charged to the other side. So in reality, we're only talking maybe a $50,000 difference, and at that moment, right now, that's rounding. I mean, it's just timing and what have you.
Difference to last year, but we're significantly over actual versus budget in both lines, right?
So on the
in
personnel
funds?
side, it's not quite, it's overstated here just because we had to park the personnel services at the moment. We're including people that are going to be paid by the construction project. So that personnel services, if you will, is overstated by 140,000. So if you took out the 140,000, we are pretty close to budget, within $50,000 of it at the moment, which is not a sign that there's a major problem. Obviously, we need to continue to monitor it. Everything is subject to approvals of budgets and modifications and all the like. But at the moment, it doesn't signal a problem yet. And then we have some items higher, some items lower. There may be some budget modifications of some sort in our future as we get closer to the second, as we into the second half of the year, we will look at that, obviously, closer.
And one last question, sorry.
Many as you like.
A little bit more color on the DOH reimbursements, delta, actual to budget.
Yeah, and so the biggest issue there was included in the budget number of 9 million that you see in that second column. Included in there was 1.5 relating to that amendment, for which we cannot invoice yet. And so we're gonna have, as we get closer to the end of the year, we're gonna have to figure out what's gonna happen with this 1.5. If it's not going to be available to us, yes, indeed, we're going to have to figure out what we're gonna do on the expense side to offset the fact that that money isn't available. But that's the biggest delta.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. Any other questions on this slide?
Yeah, I just following up on Denise's question, because maybe I didn't understand the answer. I understand the delta between actual and budget on personnel services, but I had the same question on why we budgeted our personnel significantly down from prior year. So in other words, prior year it said we were at 6.8 million in personnel services, and this year the budget was for 6 million roughly.
I'm trying to remember if there was anything unusual in the prior year number when we did the original budget. I would have to get back to you on if I could find something specific. I'm not sure. They knew they weren't going to spend it, so that's why the budget was set where it was. What might have been in prior year numbers that play with that, I don't remember.
And I can jump in quickly on that. It's not necessarily that it's under budget or different from last year. It's probably the allocation of the salaries. So we had relied on receiving the one-time enhancement amendment fund. So some of those salaries may be allocated to a different fund. But in the end, or towards the second half of the third quarter of this fiscal year, we're going to see that balance off.
Oh, so you
Just a
mean
matter of
salaries?
reallocation in different funds.
One of the
So
other
salaries are in one place? In other words, you might find personnel services costs are in different lines, you're saying, Sandra?
Yes.
Okay.
One of the other things I want to do in researching this question is to count the number of pay cycles that there were at December 31 of 20 versus December 31 of 21 and see if there's a difference. Because every payroll is about 450,000 and stuff. Add benefits is maybe 520. So I want to look at that. So that's why I need to do that research. My guess is that there's a one additional payroll cycle at December 31 of 20, but it's a total guess. I want to actually look at it, get back to you.
In the end, we have the same amount of money in the budget, at least on DOH, so we wouldn't decrease the budget. It's just a matter of reallocations.
Thank you. Any other questions on the slide before I move to the next one? So there was a question earlier relating to how we report our financials, the shelter operation and the Flushing construction project. So what we basically have, if you look at the section on the left, That is the separation or the segregation of our balance sheet into the operation, which is the first column, and the construction project, which is the second column. So that's how it adds together. And then on the right, it takes the total at 12/31 and just compares it to the audited financial statement, which will be reviewed with you, I'm assuming, at the next meeting at June 30, and then just shows the difference between what's changed over the 6 months. So that's what the balance sheet looks like. So as you can see, at 12/31/21, the organization has total net assets of just under 7.5 million. And as I mentioned earlier, we have to continue to keep separated that is on the part that is unrestricted and the part that is temporarily restricted. So at the moment, 2.1 is temporarily restricted and 5.3 is unrestricted. The cash on hand at 12/31 is reasonably healthy. It's about 5.2 million, which was significantly higher than what it was at June 30. We are close to up to date on invoicing that has been collected from DOH. The AR, which you see is about 3.1 million. Net of the DOH advance that was provided to us was about 3.7. So our net AR, if you will, is actually a negative 600K. At 12/31, most of that AR was November and December, and that was it. November actually subsequently has been paid. We did receive that in the month of January. So we are in reasonably good shape on the collection side. There is a line that I do want to note to you because it will be new. You have not seen this on prior presentations. There is an asset on the books called marketable securities, which you hadn't seen before. This will be something that the auditors will review with you in a little bit more detail. But ACC does own a portfolio of donated marketable securities. And for presentation purposes in our discussions with the auditors, we decided to include this now as an asset, and it's included in the net assets. This portfolio actually has appreciated in value over time. From a purely accounting perspective, what we are going to do going forward is we're going to be revaluing anything that's in that portfolio to market value every month. And then we will carry those gains or losses into the net assets as unrestricted. So you will see that moving forward. And at some point at a future meeting, I know there's going to have to be some discussion about an investment policy, but how we're going to handle that. But from a pure accounting perspective, we are going to continue to carry that asset on the books. And that's what that line means that you hadn't seen before. The other thing I'll note is that the organization, you might remember, does have access to a line of credit. I think it's $3 million. Fortunately, because the AR collections have been so healthy, we have not needed to draw upon it. Again, combination of the timely vouchering and collections as well as the advance that we received as part of our financial arrangement with DOH. Any question on the balance sheet? Thank you. Next slide. And so therefore the bridge between the balance sheet and the statement of activities is the cash flow summary you were looking at. This is for the 6 months ended December. So once again, we separate cash flow that relates to the shelter operations and the cash flow that relates to the construction project that's on the left. And then on the right, to give you a comparison, is the 6 months ended December 21 versus this same time last year. And as you can see, year to date December of 21, we've taken in about $11 million from operating activities. 7 million of that has been spent on basically the construction project. So our net cash flow has been healthy. For the first 6 months, we generated about $3.7 million. I mentioned the LOC balance. You will see in 20 that at this point last year we had to borrow about $1,250,000. We repaid about $900,000. So that was a net $275,000, which we did not need for this year. So that was great. I mentioned earlier about the DOH advances. So we receive 25% of the full year's budget as an advance at the beginning of the year. That's great, except it's got to be repaid. And so those recoupments are scheduled to start with our January invoicing. So we will be submitting the January invoicing, we'll say second or third week of February, hopefully collected soon after. That recoupment will be at a rate of 20% a month. So 20% of 3.7, let's call it 750. They will be recouping 750,000 a month from the January, February, March, April, and May invoices, and that's how that will get paid back. So just wanted to remind you of that. And then the other weird looking number is just a timing thing. You'll see a thing called accrued payroll related costs, and it's a negative number. It's like appears to be a draw on cash. That is purely timing. At June 30, you have a situation of a payroll cutoff. And so you may have June payroll that gets paid in July. It's just timing. It's not a headcount issue. It's all it is just accounting, getting in the right periods. But again, as you can see, this is a healthy cash flow picture for the first 6 months and better than this time last year. Any questions or comments on the cash flow? Okay, very good. So we had talked about development revenue, and I'm probably going to ask Risa to step in here, but let me just tell you what you're looking at here. So this is a comparison of the development revenue this time. This is actually, I probably should have reversed it, but it's the first column is last year, and the second column is this year, and then the last is the change in. This is not, before Risa gets into some of the details, I just want to let you know, this is not GAAP revenue. Remember, I mentioned earlier that from a GAAP revenue perspective, there are a couple things that we have to be aware of. Temporarily restricted versus unrestricted, and timing and all of that. So while this is close to GAAP revenue, it may not be exact. But I'm going to have Risa kind of step in and talk about some of the issues that you're seeing here.
Okay. Good morning. I just want to start by saying that this is really a bird's eye window of development. There were a lot of questions at the June meeting in terms of how to report, what to report, the level of detail, integrating the development report, which is more of a written narrative, into a slide that breaks everything down so that you don't have to read, you don't have to get the information in multiple pieces of multiple documents. So we are working with that. And again, as Jeff said, this is just the midpoint of our fiscal year. So this is a halfway mark. The other thing that what we took from the June meeting is that there's really, we need to do a major giving program, and we need help to do that. And how do you create that? So listening to all the comments from June, in the last 6 months, we have retained a consultant who is many of you who you've talked to. He is going to help us put together a major giving campaign, looking at what we do and how we approach and what our strategy has been in the past years and to date. Also, a lot of comment about how we're more tactical than strategic. And so again, working with this professional, he's going to help us craft, based on all the comments that he is getting from our stakeholders, our supporters, major donors, board members, some staff, a full understanding of what our capacity is to raise money. So while this is sort of really streamlined and very bird's eye, please know that we are also really excited to work with the development committee. We had one meeting where we started to talk about what we want to do, what we can do with the committee. A lot of questions that came up with respect to bequests and events. We're really going to drill in using the development committee as our asset to understand what the board wants to see and what your vision would be for major giving. And for the elements that go into our strategy to raise money. So it's still a work in progress. That being said, we're still raising money. One of the things that I'm going to get to in my presentation is the shortage in staff. I think it has to be highlighted that we've had one development person. We've had Jen DiClemente for the last 6 months operating by herself. And so this is really the result of one person wearing many hats. And we need, there was conversation too about growing the department. So that will also be something that we'll look into with the consultant and with the development committee. So with that said, did the slide, nope, go back one. There we go. Okay, so this is year to date from January 2021 and where we are in 2022. Institutional giving, and again, at the midpoint. So our goal for fiscal 22, which ends June 30th, so we have 5.5 more months, was 3.2 million. And we had an aspirational goal of 4 million. The decrease at this moment in time of 39% is really driven by, one is that the ASPCA put us on their calendar year instead of they were giving us more money so we could use it through our fiscal year, but there was some adjustment. It doesn't mean anything about our partnership with the ASPCA. It's very strong. They are a phone call away for anything that we need, but we will see just a shift from what their giving looks like because we are now on their calendar year of giving. We do have, in terms of institutional giving, laid out from last board meeting what our strategy is in giving, and we still have some upcoming proposals that we're waiting to hopefully close on. We have something outstanding with Petco. We're expecting something from the New York Community Trust, and we have a couple of applications that we still need to submit to various funding organizations. So we hope to close the gap and get to our goal for this fiscal year, which if you, I'm sorry, but I'm reading both documents together, but if you read it with the development report, the goal, the budget goal for institutional giving is 1.8. So it's a significant climb to get there.
Risa?
Yes.
Yeah, this chart's really helpful, but I think it would, because of what you're having to do now, it would be useful to have another column for next time where we are relative to goal to budget, as opposed to where we were relative to budget at the same time last year.
Absolutely. And we will do that. Right now, I have two screens. So I'm looking at this and I'm looking at the development report where it reflects what the budget is. So I totally appreciate that comment. And there were really great comments from the June meeting too. There were so many. And I think working with this consultant is really going to professionalize and drill down on exactly how to present this better, and also to sort of map out all those questions that everybody would have. And I hear you. Individual contributions.
Wait, before we go off of institutional giving, sorry, Risa, just to follow up on Yonatan's comment, because I'm a visual person versus a hearing person, and I'm just trying to understand where you're landing. So your target for the end of the fiscal year in June is what? And what do you think what's your forecast for where we're going to land?
So the target, if you look at the development report, the target budget for institutional giving that we put in June was 1.885.
And you think we're going to land where? Your current forecast is what?
And our forecast, hold on, sorry, it's another.
So it's 1.9 versus, that's what I think Yonatan was asking as well.
Yeah, hold on. Our projection for institutional giving is 1.5.
Okay, so we are expecting to miss it.
Yes, based on what we have since June been working on, and what will, anticipating what will come in, yes. And I do think
I'm trying to understand how we're doing relative to what we hoped this year versus how we were doing at this point relative to what we had hoped / budgeted last year at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I have that also. So last year at this time, well, last year at this time, this is where in 2021, we were at 1.5. For the entire year. So I'm sorry. I really, this is going to be, it's really difficult for me to answer this because what we will do after this meeting is really get from all of you exactly how you want to see it, because I have this slide, I have projections from fiscal 22 over the next 5.5 months. I have year to date at the end of the fiscal year, the entire amount versus where we are in budget. So there's like so many ways to look at this. And I apologize that we are really not capturing exactly how you want to see it. After this meeting, I will send you all of the different iterations of projections and budgeting.
And that'll be easy. We can lay it out quickly. I think high level, what I'm hearing is right now institutional giving is about 40% off. We think by the end of the year, it's going to be 20% off. If I just do that quick math. And then the question is, where do you think who is missing an expectation? Which institutional givers are missing relative to our target? Which are the big ones that are landing us in a 20% miss?
Well, I think part of it is really, it's the ASPCA shifting us to their calendar year. That is that's about, and I think that's like maybe a $300,000 or $400,000 shift, but I don't see it as lost revenue, because I know that as we move forward, we'll be on their calendar year. We'll adjust. So I don't see that we've lost funding from the ASPCA.
Does that mean more dollars next year? So it just shifts and it's a good guy next year?
Oh, I think so.
Okay, we should probably just lay that out by year to understand that part for the board. It'd be helpful to see that.
Yeah, there's in the slides I sent earlier in the week, there's a note under the explaining the ASPCA difference, but yeah, we can do that also. And then, with some of the institutional giving, let's see. I think we're a little off. Like, we really we're hopefully with Petco, we were really aggressive with what we asked. But we're starting to see these foundations are giving a little less. And so I think we're also anticipating that we might come in under with some of the bigger asks. With individual contributions, as you can see, we did quite well. I think just nationally, there's this, people are moved by the story that the pandemic is creating. There's a lot of heartfelt generosity, and people have been giving with a lot, even in unanticipated ways. For example, that Betty White challenge, everybody was jumping on the bandwagon. Our expectations was a few $1,000s. We raised over 30, and we captured over 1,000 donors. So that tells you something. Even we had this conversation in the development committee, and to Dennis's point, lots of people giving small amounts, just being moved by a story, can add up. So on individual contributions, we are quite strong. Events have just been a challenge. We thought that we budgeted it from last year based on the gala results from 2020, but the gala results for 21 came in under. People are just tired. We really need to think about it. I am hopeful that in the spring we can do something. Maybe we'll do it outdoors. It could be a celebration. So we're optimistic, but that's also an area where we're really going to drill into it with the development committee. Like, what's the appetite among the board members? Who would come? What would what should it look like? So that's also a real opportunity for us to get a better budget and plan in place for events. bequests, last year we had a very large $150,000 bequest from someone who wasn't on our radar. This is an area where we know absolutely this has to be something that we have to get done, and we'll get it done this year. How do we do it? What's the ask? What does it look like? But I think that with a little more manpower, again, Jen, to her credit, has really been wearing many, many hats. And now we have a development associate, so it's helpful. But I think also using this consultant, we might be able to put something together or outsource what it should look like. But we agree that bequest is something that we absolutely should have a solid strategy about. And city council, we did better. City council's a little tricky in that they give us discretionary funding, and then we have to put together what sort of mirrors their requests. And in the pandemic, it was quite difficult to really respond to everything. We had to go back to city council and say, look, we just can't do clinics. It's a pandemic. How can we repurpose the money? So we're really thrilled to see that kind of increase from city council funding. And hopefully the restrictions from the pandemic will reduce some of the barriers we have to provide services. But that also is, and that stays, that's 154,000. In fact, Jen is working on the ask to city council for fiscal 23. So that number won't change. And overall, at this moment in time, we're at 1.9. Last year, at this moment in time, we were at 2.4. Our goal, again, is to try and get to 3.2. That was in the budget for fiscal 22. And I think, yeah, that's really, you know, I'm really, this sort of going to go into my operational talk, but, you know, I think that the pandemic is just starting to affect all of us. You know, we're going to talk about staffing, but having one person in development is really, that is a challenge. And I don't say it because Jen doesn't do it. Jen's amazing. She really is. This is her work. But if we want more, we need to put more resources into it. And, you know, so I welcome all of your guidance or experience on with other not-for-profits and how many staff we want to put to this. All of the development staff is not charged to the Department of Health. So we need to spend money to raise money, which is the, you know, sort of the guide every not-for-profit goes through. This is separate. The staffing is separate from our DOH contract funding.
Thank you, Risa, for that overview and also the detailed conversation that helped answer a lot of questions. And I think the key thing here is the board is fully behind the work that you and Jen are doing, working with the consultants and working to create a strategy that's going to see our fundraising efforts grow and yield more results. And it's great to hear some of the things that seem, you know, that we're missing targets for the year, that a lot of it, like with the ASPCA, our incredible support we get from the ASPCA, it's really like shifting in time, and it's not a loss of support in any way. And we're so appreciative of that. And, you know, it's also great to see, like you said, that there are so many people at kind of the grassroots level who are reaching out, moved by the work we're doing, wanting to help, who are giving us money that adds up to a lot. And I just wanted to mention that Betty White campaign I found very moving in many ways, as a big fan of Betty. And also just how we as an organization also lifted the partners that we work with and suggested people donate to their favorite, whatever their community rescue groups. And I feel like that was a really amazing thing to see, that we raised money, but we also helped raise money for a lot of our New Hope partners. And I feel like that really helped also foster a closer partnership with the people we rely so much to work with us, the rescue groups who are working with us in our alliance to complete our mission. So thank you for that update.
Okay. So we'll move on then to
Move on to your report.
Put on a different hat. Okay. I'm just waiting for those slides. Ah, okay. Okie doke. Okay, so, and I just, before we jump in, I just want to say also, on behalf of everyone who works at ACC, a thank you for that acknowledgement about how hard staff have been working, and the strain and the pressure. It's really, it means a lot to everybody to know that there's a lot of empathy out there for the kind of work that ACC does. And I do, I love what you said, Patrick, about just a reminder to be kind. You know, the pandemic, I think, has just changed so much, and everybody's at the end of their tether. If not everybody, 99% of the people I know certainly are. And our staff take a lot of blows. Yeah. And it really breaks me when I hear what is going on. It's not just about animals. We have staff who leave the shelter to get a cup of coffee around the corner and try to help someone who says this dog's been tied up for nearly an hour outside in the freezing cold, only to be physically and verbally assaulted in front of the shelter by the person who owned that dog when we were trying to help. It's jarring. We are really trying to do the best for the animals in our care, and certainly the people who work there and the people in the community. And just what is going on now, I think I just want the board to understand that outside our four walls, it is tough out there. We've always talked about needing some training for customer service, just how do you diffuse and sort of bring down to a rational level when somebody is acting out. And the staff have done an amazing job. The composure that they are able to pull together in the face of clients who are really hysterical, it is quite amazing. And I don't think it's anything that anyone thinks is going to be part of the job when you think, oh, it's, I'm going to work with animals. But it's happening on the outside too. And so your comment about being kind, it just really resonates. It really does. I mean, the staff are taking a lot on, a lot. And so thank you for recognizing that and making them feel supported. Okay, so on to animal sheltering and trends in animal welfare. As we've done from the beginning of the pandemic, we just want to know what's going on nationally and where ACC lies. And I will say we are not an outlier. There are pretty much the same three issues everyone's facing nationally, and probably, certainly on a national scale and every level of, job and organization. The crisis of hiring. It is really hard to hire these days. We are definitely short-staffed. Our ideal number is 285. It's always been 285. We're at 246. We add a few people. We're not seeing huge groups of people leaving, but we're seeing a difficulty in hiring on. We definitely see people leaving for more money. And money that we're not even in the realm of competing. Nationally, shelters are closing because of staffing concerns, whether it's a few hours each day or 1 day a week. The middle slide is an important photo, is an important one because it is Austin Animal Services, which is, very well respected and holds itself out to be a model of animal welfare. And they're closing 1 day a week because they're feeling the pain. We feel it like they do. And then the third national attention is to the veterinary shortage and in vet services, not just vets, but vet services, which Dr. Brennan will speak to in a moment. So that's, and what's going on at ACC is reflective of what's going on nationally. Everyone's exhausted. This is 2 years. We're looking at 2 years. So the data that we show, it's fair. Like in the beginning, it's like, it's not fair to compare it to 2020 because it's such an aberration. What 2021 was a reflection of 2020, and you'll see it in the data. It is, we're not out of it. We are in a pandemic, and thank God for the vaccine, and that, people who get vaccinated are much more protected. It's a little less terrifying to get COVID, fewer hospitalizations, but people are getting sick and staff are going home and quarantining. And so everyone's exhausted from that. We are really grateful that for the vaccine mandate, 98% of our staff are vaccinated. And we have no issues with the mask mandate. Everyone is masked. We have masks that we ask clients to put on when they come in. And at times we were giving clients a second mask to make sure they were double masked when they came in, because we don't know what their vaccination status is. When people are exposed to COVID, or if they're sick, the quarantine really takes its toll on us. I'll get to one slide where there was such a dip in services. We had to close in February for certain services because we had no staff. And February of 21, there was still, the vaccine was just starting to come into play. And not a lot of people were vaccinated yet. But even with the vaccine, we have a lot of shortages. We've had a lot of trouble in December in particular. A lot of people called out. And then a lot of our expenses are still pandemic related. There's a lot of precautions that you still need to take. And that's just a whole other area that we've been, spending money in. And really, I think the big pain point is, and I don't want to underemphasize the national veterinary shortage, but I will say overall, staffing, keeping the level of staff where it needs to be so that we can be at our maximum capacity to care is an uphill climb. And this is the second year that it's been like that. So those are the greatest challenges that we're facing. And I think because the crisis in veterinary services is so dramatic, I want to just give the floor to Dr. Brennan, who can just give you a little update of what that looks like at ACC.
Risa, sorry to interrupt. I just technical issue here. Jonathan had to be, he had to leave and re-enter because of the video connection, and we need help getting him back onto the panel. And again, thank you for that really good, serious, honest overview of where we are and what we're facing. And I'm turning it back over to Robin. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. What Risa said obviously can't be more overstated. I think any of you guys that have animals and have tried to get appointments with your own vets or have experienced emergencies are probably have witnessed longer wait times to get into private veterinary hospitals and longer wait times sitting in ERs. I would say arguably the veterinary workforce has an impending crisis if we're not already in it. The profession, as many other public and private industries, was and still is being hit by the Great Resignation. We have an overwhelming percentage of veterinarians actually electing to leave the profession permanently. I read an article this week where out of all veterinarians that were surveyed, 40% are thinking of leaving within the next 12 months. Then you have veterinarians that are electively choosing to become underemployed. So whether or not it's childcare issues or elder care issues, COVID-related things, stress, burnout, people are demanding more work-life balance and pushing back very hard on employers to accommodate them. So nationally, veterinarians have a higher turnover rate, almost 2 times that of their medical human counterparts. And licensed vet techs actually have the highest turnover rate in the health profession. So, you know, the root cause, like Risa said, we're tired. We're tired and burnt out and suffering greatly from compassion fatigue. So when you get to that point, you just have fewer veterinarians in the workforce pool. It just becomes a law of supply and demand. And when you have high staffing shortages and an increase in demand for services, I mean, it is taking veterinarians, they used to be able to see 4 appointments an hour. Now it's maybe 2 or 3. So, you know, productivity has declined due to COVID protocols, but you're now in a situation where there's a wage war going on. And simply more locally, ACC can't compete. We have a high percentage of corporate owned practices in the city that are luring away the workforce, offering $50,000 to $100,000 sign-on bonuses, salaries upwards of $150,000 to $200,000 a year, and the ACC budget doesn't accommodate that. We can't even come to the table. Also, things that they're demanding is lower work weeks. You know, some some corporate partners now consider 34 hours full time, and so then there's this very intriguing prospect of per diem. A lot of permanently employed veterinarians are electing to leave their jobs to do locum services because they can get $150 to $200 an hour. I was actually offered $300 an hour to work in an ER out on Long Island. That's really hard to say no to. When you look at what we're paying, just salary alone, not including benefits, and we have an amazing benefits package, but our vets probably make about $60 an hour. So we're struggling to attract people, clearly. And private practices, there are a lot of nice, new, brand new, shiny veterinary hospitals out there. Bond Vet, for one, small door, that you walk in there and it's just this amazing, shiny place. And you compare that with their salary and their benefits and to the institutional setting that ACC has, it's difficult even on an environmental level to attract vets. So, and LVTs. I think in the past 2 or 3 months, we've made some progress in our salary structure. And our goal right now has to be to keep the people that we have happy. And we're trying desperately to do that. But I think it's just important for you all to know that our veterinary staff has been decreased by 40%. We've lost 5 doctors in the last 4 or 5 months, and that is going to impact what we are able to do. I could go on and on about this forever because it really is.
Dr. Brennan, yeah, I'm not trying to cut you off, but I just want to let you know that the executive committee, every month we meet with Risa, and this has been on our minds, and we're all trying to figure out ways to think about how we can help here. It's a national trend, like you say. I mean, I think I want to thank you again. Thank you and your team. The veterinary services team are doing amazing work. And I know, we're all trying very hard to find ways to get the staffing levels up. I kind of turn back to also the way I opened our meeting describing who we are. We are at the front lines here, and we are the only organization doing what we're doing in this city, in this great city of New York, in terms of being on the front lines, rescuing more than 20,000 animals a year. And there are a lot of things challenging out there in terms of staffing. But we have our strengths here, and we have our challenges. And again, the big strength is you and your team. So I just wanted to thank you again, and just really single out the amazing work you're doing under such hard conditions. So thanks.
Very much appreciate it, Patrick. Thank you.
Okay. Let's look at intake of strays and surrendered dogs and cats. We go back to 2019, which was a reflection of pre-pandemic and what it looked like. As you can see, not a big change from 2020. And I don't think it surprises anyone on our team. This is year 2 of the pandemic. What is interesting to note, though, is the pandemic didn't start until March with lockdowns. So you still had January and February where life was normal. 2021 reflects an entire year of like, this is pandemic. I think the reason why it sort of evens out in terms of intake is that there were no lockdowns this year. It was just a shift in how we do business and how we, people were starting to come out, and we did adoptions, and then we pulled back a little bit on people coming into the shelter. So anyway, it really is an apples to apples comparison. And certainly not to 2019. Some interesting points here is the decrease in both stray dogs and cats, and the increase in owner surrender. I also want to point out the pink box of end of life services. We also get, over 1,000 animals each year. People seeking out end-of-life services from us. And as Dr. Brennan explained, with the shortage of vet services, we would expect more people are going to start turning to ACC to help provide either end-of-life or other types of services. It is a service that, we are here for the community for. That's a really hard time in any pet owner's life. So that's what we're here for. And that makes up part of the intake. So next slide, please. Just to dive a little deeper into what our data shows about owner surrenders, you can see these reasons don't really change dramatically over time. And they're also a reflection of the best information that we can get from people. It's a hard decision to make, and our admissions team does a really good job having these conversations. So this is what we've captured. On the housing restrictions for dogs, I thought that was even, we drilled down even further. Just to give you a sense of what we're seeing, the homeless situation and people who are evicted, that's going to, the eviction moratorium was lifted on January 15th. I have a slide later when we get to community resources about that, and we can talk a little bit more about that. But that's certainly something that we have our eye on to see if that changes at all. But again, these are the numbers for the entire year. So we've only seen 24 dogs come in out of evictions. And then I would say one thing about cats in particular, I would just go back for a second, the increase. We saw a lot of hoarding cases this year, and a hoarding case, you know, someone would actually, either a social worker or the person themselves calls us, and that's multiple cats at one time. And so when you get, it is good that someone calls us in so that we can help, but we're starting to see hoarding being an issue, which is something to point out for 2021 in terms of intake.
Lisa, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So the last 2 years, pandemic years, have been almost 10,000 less animals than pre-pandemic. What has the team's thought about as things start to go back to, I won't say normal, but something resembling what was before? Do we have a sense that we're going to go back up to those levels, or, I mean, how are you thinking about that?
You know, I think, yeah, I mean, I think that's always how we strategize, like prepare for the worst, or, you know, the higher number. We are putting more resources and strategy into community. What could we do to maybe keep surrender down? How can we help people keep their pets longer? There are some parts of this data that we are not in a position to change, like landlord pet policies. I mean, it's something that a lot of animal welfare organizations are lobbying about. But yeah, we're preparing for that, and we're trying to hire. It's going to be, how do we position our resources to respond to more animals coming in? But I think, like, we just have to keep pushing on these programs.
Yeah, that was going to be part 2 of my question. I mean, do we think that the drastic drop off and continuation of drop off of intake is purely pandemic, or is some of it because of what we're doing to help people keep their pets, to, you know, provide the resources, all that good stuff?
I think it's a combination of both. I think the pandemic was like a big, like, you know, it set off like a major reaction. But I think our past data showed that we were like moving slowly in the right direction, and taking an approach toward much more work outside. What could we do before you get to us? And so I think that if we could add resources in that direction, and you know, at least use to our advantage what's happening now with the intake, that would be, you know, that would be a real positive. I will say, though, even though we have less, you know, fewer animals that are in, the staffing crisis is so bad. We are still beyond our capacity to care. So, you know, we often look at the data and say, gee, well, what a relief. We have 10,000 fewer animals this year. We still have cats in cages in the hallway. We still have people calling out, and restrictions on how many people could come into the building to do adoption. So there's so many things that are creating, I don't want to say barriers, but creating, you know, sort of roadblocks. How do we continue to do our work with all these other issues that are in the way? So, you know, on the one hand, I'm grateful that it is 10,000 less, because I really don't know how we would handle 20,000 animals with the type of crisis that we're in right now in this pandemic. But again, the strategy really is on what can we do for the community. Now, when we look at what's going on with the intake by species, and so we're adding into this mix guinea pigs and rabbits. This is a bell curve that's pretty consistent with all prior years. You know, I'll start with just the very beginning. In February, you see that dip, and that's because we closed due to COVID staffing issues. But the bell curve, you can see in the warmer months, it starts to peak. We get into kitten season. We always have more cats than we do dogs. But a really big issue is guinea pigs. We got twice as many guinea pigs, more than twice as many than we did last year. There's similar to the rabbit ban that City Council enacted. There's movement afoot to do the same thing, not a ban on the sale of guinea pigs in pet shops. And so we're hopeful that City Council is gonna pass that bill. And I'll get to that in a few slides. We're working with City Council as part of that effort. And the other thing, I think what's so important to realize is, and again, back to Patrick's point about taking everything. So it's 500 guinea pigs and rabbits. These animals require care. They require housing. They require transport. They require food and cleaning. So it's, not just one small, cute little guinea pig. This is a live being that needs our attention the way a dog needs, the way a cat needs. So this drains our capacity to care. And also the housing. Right now we have housing, really it was just for rabbits. Then we had all these guinea pigs. And so we had to combine the housing for rabbits and guinea pigs, which we know is really not the best. Half the room is rabbits, half the room is guinea pigs. So that's becoming an issue. When we talk about the capital projects later, there's a real opportunity to do better and to address, different species that are coming in. And to your point, Karen, what are we thinking about in terms of intake going up or what we're doing in the community? I think that, with the new facilities, I think we'll be able to offer a lot more. And I think people might see us as a real service in the community. And in Queens, certainly we're supposed to open up with a public-facing clinic where we can help people who have surrender issues. We can help them right there. So that's all part of that strategy. Okay. I wanted to point out, every board meeting, we always have a slide, a feel-good slide of all the others that we take in. And I certainly, they make for great photos, and it's really heartwarming. And the staff, such a nice diversion to have this huge pig in the behavior assessment room for all the staff to come and see. And you could see how many we took in here. And it is a diversion, and it is kind of like, yeah, we do this too. We take everything. But there's a cost to this that is human time, dollars. And again, it is just our field team goes out to rescue. There's specialized transport. Like, how do we get a cow back to the shelter until we can place them? Look at the size. It's hard to see. I was in the Brooklyn shelter when that pig came in. It's the middle, bigger photo. That pig was huge, adorable, but there's so much that goes into our day-to-day. I think these make great stories. They're really great. The media love them. But if you see these bullets, it's food, it's medical care, it's housing, it's placement, it's transport. It's a lot. And it's layered on top of the dog and cat and rabbit story. And so I love showing these, but I also want to stress the cost of care and the capacity of care issues. The interesting bottom picture of the frogs, I think there were about 72 frogs 67 bullfrogs that came in together. So, not an easy an easy day at work. Okay, so on the next slide, we'll talk about the placement rate. We'll start with dogs. And we recently started to break down placement this way. We always talk about the placement rate as a percentage number, but there's more outcome. And this pie chart We did it previously in June, and this is how we'll continue to show the various outcomes of the total number of dogs and cats that were in the shelter. And it breaks out into all of these different parts. I think top of mind is always shelter euthanasia. That breaks down into medical and behavior. Again, and I will say this every time, ACC does not euthanize for space. We don't euthanize animals that are healthy. We work long and hard to find the best outcome for the most animals, and placement is a driver. I mean, placement is super, super important. So when you look at shelter euthanasia, there are reasons that are well thought out. End-of-life services, still a very big number for dogs. Foster care is, while it's not part of the placement rate, it is a temporary placement. And we'll get to what we're doing with foster. It's been really a really important piece during the pandemic. New Hope, I want to point out, and I will drill into this a little deeper. New Hope is tremendous. That is, we are so lucky, I would say, in terms of when we look at national curves. ACC is so far ahead of the curve in terms of partnerships with New Hope or with the rescue community. We were a source for New Hope partners to take animals for them to get adopted or for them to be put in foster. Not every single animal that New Hope takes is a challenge. They've taken many animals that help them supply their, we're the source for their supply chain. So I'm really, really grateful to the New Hope community and to the work that our placement team has done to cultivate those kind of relationships. And we 15% of the animals of the dogs that came in were returned to home. And then we had 17% of them were adopted. And then we do the same thing for cats. The big number here in cats, obviously way more cats than dogs. The hoarding cases have presented a challenge. A lot of those cats come in sick. The shelter euthanasia of cats is never for behavior. It is health. And kittens that don't thrive. And similar to the dog slide, same breakout. New Hope actually did still over 3,000 cats. We were able to get over 3,500 placed. So we did better in adoptions for cats. Part of the reason I think for cats is we opened briefly before Delta and then Omicron took us down. We opened the shelter for people to come in and browse and look at cats, just cats, because the dogs are spread out so much. I think that drove adoptions and helped us do a little better. And then we stopped that. Too many people in small buildings. But it definitely shows you that one day when this thing lifts, getting people back into the shelter to walk around and freely browse our animals is definitely going to help with placement. Okay, next slide. And this is just really, the highlight here is about collaboration. The pandemic gave us this, we could not have gotten through the pandemic without collaboration. And we really embrace community help. And the yellow numbers in that box on the bottom left shows where we were in 2020. So we did a little bit better in adoptions. And New Hope did a little better last year than this year. But overall, this is incredible. This is what partnership looks like. We have had nearly 250 partners pulled from us this year. On the far, on that bar there, those are the partners that have taken more than 50 animals this year. We're always adding new partners. It's an application. It is not very difficult. We do a little bit of due diligence to make sure that we have a good setup with any new partners. The other thing I want to emphasize is that what partnership is and collaboration is like it goes both ways. And so we are really grateful for the animals that our partners pull. And we also recognize that. And many times when we need their help, we've offered stipends and we have grant funding for that. And so if it's a medical case or if it's a difficult to place animal for behavior reasons or other challenges, we have offered stipends in the past. And we have given out we've given 406 stipends out this year of various sizes. But again, I think that this is something to celebrate, because when we participate in these national conversations, there are so many shelters out there that don't have the type of program that we have. And this is, nearly 2 decades in the making. This took a long time to craft and to cultivate. And it really helps, especially now. So the next slide will show you what's doing in foster. We added a lot new fosters to the program. It's very easy to become a foster, and the first step is just an orientation. And you can find an orientation sign up online. 539 of the people who fostered this year actually adopted their pet. Speaking from personal experience, fostering is just great. It's so much fun. And when you are able to help in the adoption process and find someone for that pet that you've had, it's really rewarding. So I really highly encourage foster. I will say, when you see there's a little dip from last year to this year as a percentage of intake, 14% versus 15% last year. There was, as I said, we opened up for cat browsing and cat adoption in the shelter. And so we're so short-staffed. So the foster team kind of shifted and helped with adoptions. But it's definitely not a program that's declining or that's of any less importance to our overall programs and placements.
It's also good to see it's very narrow bands, but that there's guinea pig and rabbit fostering in 2021 that's hitting that sort of thing. Point that out.
Yeah.
Yes. What do we call failed fostering? Because I'm one of those people. What do we call it? Foster success.
Yeah, it's
so,
a foster success.
Yeah. So I'm one of those 539. I can empathize and relate to those people. So it's a great thing, fostering. Thanks.
And you can continue, if you foster and it's sort of like you keep paying it forward. I know from personal experience, I've been a dog sitter for both of my fosters who went to adopters. So, I get to still see them and spoil them. So again, along the point about embracing community, like people in New York City are volunteers, and we have a great volunteer program, and we definitely struggled in the pandemic. We shut down. We did not want anybody in the building for their safety and our safety. And so you can see, the hours fell down. That's in the bars, and the line is the number of volunteers. We are building the program back up. What we added in the pandemic was something called operational forces, which was adding other volunteer opportunities. I think a lot of people think of dog walking and cat enrichment as those are the opportunities. But there's so much more, and especially in a staffing crisis, if people want to come in and help with the laundry, if they want to help the animal care staff, they can help the enrichment staff. There's so many opportunities. It's not just like 2 different places. So operational forces really opened up the door to a lot of people who may not want to walk dogs, but want to help. And you can see it was over 2,000 hours. we're adding volunteer roles in the medical and adoptions department to be like adoption ambassadors, or to talk to clients, or to interpret for Spanish speaking individuals. So there's a lot of opportunity for volunteerism, and the program has some new leadership, and they're doing a really good job of just like starting from fresh, like what worked, what didn't work, what do we need to add, and you can see we're building it back up. And certainly for dog walking, training is so important. And so because that's a real skill set, and our own staff are busy doing, our behavior staff is busy training our own staff and working with our animals, we have actually have someone specifically for volunteers to do some basic dog training, so that we're ensuring the safety of our staff and of the volunteers. And then there's a quarterly online orientation, so we're always adding volunteers and looking to add volunteers. And then this is sort of like the big, what it all leads up to, and sort of in response to your question, Karen, community resources, like really pushing out there. The pandemic, it restricted us, but we were able to really push through, get out into the community. That's where a lot of the institutional giving is going. You can see a real interest in community response. And so we highlighted some of the big supporters of our surrender prevention program. One very interesting note is the surrender request inquiries that we get via survey. People reach out to us. We have them fill out a survey. Look how many people are filling that out. It really helps the admissions team understand what's the need, how they can prioritize, who we can make appointments for. What we're seeing certainly with the hiring shortage and in crisis, it's really like triage. How can we manage? Who can wait a little longer instead of everybody coming to the shelter or waiting for an appointment? So the surveys really provide a lot of good information that helps the team figure out and strategize for the future. A lot of food distribution, as you can see, still able to do some spay-neuter surgery for people who need help in keeping their pets, vaccine clinics. So, we were busy. We were definitely busy. And even with the restrictions of the pandemic. And then the last bullet, which is super important, I mentioned that the moratorium ended. It's January 15th, not the 1st. Our team is preparing for that. We have our director of community resources, who is, I think, one of the panelists. Actually, John, I would love for you just to give a quick couple minutes of what we're doing. Part of it is partnering with legal aid. We think that this could be a big issue to deal with, and so we're preparing. And I think it's important for you to see that we're what we do in anticipation of intake. To your point, Karen.
Yeah, thanks, Risa. So we know that the moratorium ended on January 15th, and we're anticipating seeing an uptick in surrender requests due to people now facing eviction. So to prepare for this, we've connected with the Legal Aid Society to better understand the actual eviction process. We've noticed that a lot of clients coming to us saying that they're facing eviction have not actually been served a marshal's notice, which starts the legal process. So with our partnership with the Legal Aid Society, we're going to be able to better connect our clients with people that can actually help them through the legal process of eviction. And when they're not going through the full eviction process, they can keep their pets in the meantime.
So we will continue to update on that. Maybe in 6 months' time, we'll have something even bigger.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to our partnership and to see how we're able to help the community.
Great, thank you, John. Okay, and then City Council, it's a big exciting time in New York City, new mayor, lots of new city council members. We have had very strong relationships with some city council members who have now switched jobs or are continuing in their districts. In particular, Mark Levine, who was chair of the health committee, is now the Manhattan Borough president. Gail Brewer, who was the Manhattan Borough president, is now a city council member. Council member Holden, Moya, like we know them. And so we're going to continue to work with them. They many times have reached out to us directly for questions in advance of city council hearings or just issues in their communities. And so we're going to continue to build that. It's exciting to see this new class of elected officials. There's a lot of opportunity for us to network with them. And so we're going to spend some time going door to door and explaining who we are and seeing how we can be an asset. I think most people know by now, it's been in the news that Mayor Adams wants to adopt, and I am very optimistic that if he does adopt, he'll come to ACC. He's been a terrific supporter as borough president of Brooklyn. He came to ACC during the pandemic in 2020. Everyone came outside. He was great. He's a Brooklynite. And so I would be surprised if he wouldn't seek ACC out first. There has been it's just really beginning of the terms for these new city council members, but there was early on in January a panel of city council, the new city council members in the ASPCA, HSUS, Wild Bird Fund, other animal welfare organizations, and ACC made a presentation individually, just like get to know us and who we are. So we're going to push that out and do more work there. And then I mentioned the ban of guinea pigs. We have our eye on that. Working with voters for animal rights. They're very active in that. And so we're sort of on the sideline saying, yes, we are totally in favor of that legislation. And then Queens, the next slide is about Queens, the capital project that we're working on. As you can see, it is moving. The roof went on.
It's rising. Great to see.
In particular, the bottom left, you can, I don't know if you can see, Yonatan came out this summer. We did a tour. There's two city council members there, Holden and Vallone. Patrick Kwan from the mayor's office was there. This is such a great opportunity politically, just to get to city council, to community board members. We have one person on our team who's like, that is what she's doing. She is focused on Queens, city council members in Queens, local officials, local businesses, such an opportunity. We're still on target to open this year, meaning we will have the temporary certificate of occupancy late summer, early fall. And then from there, we just sort of move closer and closer to a certificate of occupancy and staffing it up. But as you can see, the slides, the two pictures on the top were taken just this past Monday. We have weekly calls on Monday about the progress. And since the last meeting, it was checking my notes. We reported that the floor on the second and third floor was being completed. Well, all of that work that we talked about in June, that's done. Now the roof is on. I think the installation of the elevator is next. And it's really exciting. It's really exciting. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for showcasing what animal welfare in New York City looks like at the highest level, at best practices. And there's back to the fundraising point, there's a great opportunity to use this shelter, its design and what it is intended to do as a starting point for fundraising, certainly in Queens. So I'm going to turn it over to Mario Merlino, who will fill us in on the rest of the capital projects.
And
Okay, I'm sorry, good.
sorry, I just wanted, we are running over and we started a bit late and we are going to get to public comments, but and it's great that we're segueing over to Mario's presentation, just so everyone understands. The Queens Project is something that ACC is managing with the generous support of incremental funding from the city. And Mario's going to update us on the city-owned facilities now. Thanks.
Great, Patrick, thank you. And you're saving time because I was going to say the same thing. So good morning, everybody. I'm Mario Merlino again, and I'm representing all the many people across multiple city agencies and especially at the health department that are working on this. Thank you very much, the board of ACC for inviting me. So this is a list of the projects, and I'm going to talk about all of them except Queens. Next slide, please. So starting off with the Brooklyn Animal Care Center renovation. Here's a rendering of the building from the Linden Avenue side, and we anticipate that construction will start this fall. Next slide, please. So here is a, go back to the previous slide. So that's just so everybody sees, gets a chance to see what the building will look like. So here's a rendering of the building from the parking lot. Next slide. And I think we have the main entrance. Next slide, please. And here we have the Staten Island renovation. Phase 2 is ongoing, and here's a picture of what the construction looks like. This is, I think, looking at the front of the main entrance to the building, what it will be. If you go to the next slide. This is from the same angle, what it will look like when it's finished and the landscaping is done. And you could see the phase 2 projection is completion is next month. Next slide, please. And on to the Bronx, and this is a rendering from Bartow Avenue. We project that we will move in the spring of 25 and construction starting in 23, so a year from now. Next slide, please. And here's a rendering of the main entrance. Next slide. And the sort of the Sally Port side of the building from Co-op City Boulevard. Next slide, please. And I think Lisa talked a little bit about the Manhattan Pet Adoption Center already. Here's a picture of the new slab floor in the building. So there's a construction site. Next slide, please. And the work and move-in will be hopefully January 23. And this is a picture of the front of the adoption center from 109th Street, the artist rendering. So that's all I have. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much, Mario. And I should call out for the people who are interested in making public comments or have questions, please put them in the chat now, and Katie Hansen will help us moderate when we move to that. Any questions for Mario from the board? It's great to see these renderings and also to see real progress happening in construction on a number of the projects getting close in Staten Island to being done. This really does represent a real new, total game-changing future for ACC and the care we can provide in all the 5 boroughs. And so it's nice to have that update. So much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Okay, so if people have questions, they need to go into the QA and either put your name or put your question. Deborah, I'm gonna go to you first. Why is there no hot water again at MAC?
I'm going to defer all the facility questions, since these are city-owned buildings, to DOH for response.
Good morning, everyone. This is Corinne Schiff from the Health Department. So I don't have the details on the plumbing issues, but we are working, my colleagues in our facilities department are working closely with ACC to monitor facilities issues and to correct the problems as quickly as we can.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions? I don't see anyone raising their hand. Marilyn Galfin, do you have questions? I don't see you as a participant, so.
I see Susan Wolf for Dr. Brennan.
Okay, hold on. Susan, I unmuted you. Susan? I don't even see you as a list of attendees.
Odd.
Susan? I don't know where she
Hear me?
went. Hello?
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. So here's my question for Dr. Brennan. Is there a way to either appeal or bring pressure to bear on the private veterinary industry to give back in a measured way and an equal way among them to take on some of the veterinary services that ACC, could use help with? And one of the things I'm thinking of in particular is dental care for cats. I once had a vet who said that cats shouldn't have teeth because they just, they don't last. So, and what I'm thinking of, and this may be naive, what I'm thinking of is some sort of tax advantage to encourage them, or some sort of pro bono requirement for licensing. Anyway, that's my question. Is there a way?
Hi, Susan. Thank you. And I might call on my esteemed colleague, Dr. Kuhlman, to back me up because he's in the private sector. But I would love for that to happen, Susan. And we have very limited current partnerships with some of our private veterinary colleagues in the community already that are doing what they can for us. I think the issue right now is it becomes competition between trying to service their loyal private clients and then taking on an additional burden of ACC pets. But we do have individual practices that are doing actual dentals for us as well. Not to the level that we would like, but when Queens opens up, we're going to have our own dental facility, so that need will go away. And so, yeah, I sit on the board of the New York City Veterinary Medical Association and have tried to leverage that entity to ferret out any hospital or private veterinarian that wants to give back in the capacity. But I think right now what we're seeing is just everybody is working over their capacity for care, and that includes the private vet hospitals right now. We had a very interesting meeting with a representative from Best Friends this week and looking at some interesting ways to partner with them to kind of job share doctors, but that is pretty early in the discussions. But thank you for the suggestion, and hopefully as things go back to normal, veterinary capacity in the private sector may increase.
Thanks. Thanks, Dr. Brennan. I don't know who this person is, but it's help. Who is help?
Katie, can you hear me? This is Marilyn trying to speak here.
Oh, you're signed in as help?
No, that wasn't me.
Okay, well,
I don't know. Maybe it was. I don't know.
Okay, go ahead.
This question is to Dr. Brennan, trying to understand why the use of trazodone and gabapentin is still going on in high doses. Animals are having bad side effects. It could be even, perhaps, maybe even leading to maybe the death of some animals. Even rescues have spoken out on the side effects of this trazodone. It's a very concerning issue. I have reached out to Dr. Coleman, never got a response. I've reached out to the Department of Health, never got a response. This is a very concerning issue, and what is being done so that these practices are looked into and changed or stopped.
Thanks for your concern, Marilyn. I'd say, look, I'm not going to address individual animals, but I'm just going to say this. I'm a veterinarian who holds my oath very seriously, especially where it says where I'm going to use my skills and my knowledge for the prevention and relief of animal suffering. I would never make a conscious decision to implement any type of policy or protocol that would harm an animal. And I do take offense to people that think that that's true. I'm interested solely in life-saving, 100%. And sometimes pharmacology is a necessary tool in the toolbox to save animals from potential euthanasia. In that toolbox is also enrichment and socialization and all the things that our volunteers do for those animals and providing them with a livable environment. But if medication can prevent a dog from deteriorating in the shelter or mitigate any unwanted behavior that might express itself during its stay that might lead to the euthanasia, then I'm going to choose that option.
Thanks, Robin. Deborah Thomas has a few questions. One is about having an outdoor fundraiser. And then another one, yeah, could we have an outdoor fundraiser?
I know Risa mentioned that we're looking to the spring, and that seems like an opportunity, and I think we all share in that idea and goal. So we'll definitely be looking into that, I'm sure, speaking on behalf of the development committee.
Okay. And then we have a question about New Hope auditing.
Sure. So I got a question directly to me about the New Hope partner audit process. So we audit all of our partners after their probationary period. And if they haven't pulled a significant amount of animals or any animals, we extend the probationary period until they do. We audit partners if we have a reason for concern in terms of the amount of animals they're pulling or the types of animals they're pulling. And then we also do just random audits where we will reach out to partners. The goal is to have a better sense of what's happening to our animals after they're leaving ACC. And the audit process is selecting a certain amount of animals that were pulled by the rescue, reaching out to their foster, their adopter, following their medical status, their behavior, and seeing how they're doing from there. In addition to that, we're also just in constant contact with our New Hope partners. It's a relationship that goes both ways. So outside of the regular audit process, we're always getting updates on how different animals are doing.
Thanks so much, Jessica. Esther, I'm going to unmute you. Hold on.
Hi, Esther.
Hello?
Hi.
Esther, we can hear you.
Did we lose Esther?
Esther?
Okay, how's this? Is this working?
Yes.
Corin Schiff. Thank you for being here. You're the DOH representative. ACC is not, looks like it's not going to get that last minute $3 million amendment to the budget. It's desperately needed because we're in a wage war. Even before COVID started, we always needed more than a $3 million supplement to the base budget. Is it within the DOH's power to give the ACC that missing $3 million? Also, a question for Mr. Molino. You've shown us the same photos of Brooklyn and the Bronx. What is the reality that either will come true, that we will have a new building in Brooklyn and that we will have a first ever Bronx? What's the real reality? Because I've heard it's like nil. So those are my two questions to Ms. Schiff and Mr. Merlino.
Thanks, Esther. So we're working on the funding, and I can answer for Mario too. There's all of the projects are slated to continue. So there's no change. We provide these updates so you can see the milestones that we reach and the next milestones ahead. But everything is on tap. There were some delays in the city for certain projects. So the Bronx is delayed a little bit, but everything is proceeding.
Thanks, Corinne. Marilyn, you have another question. I will unmuting you.
Yes, hi. This is about the New Hope situation. There are very, very few New Hope rescues that are pulling any of the behavior dogs. We still have the issue of so many of these dogs being labeled behavior. That really is working against the dogs. All the dogs that come in there are have fear, they're traumatized. This is being used against these dogs. And I do not agree, with what Ms. Weinstock said. There are adoptable, treatable animals that are being, what I would call, killed versus animal suffering, which is euthanasia. Case in point is the dog Billy. You're talking about short staff. You actually lost a volunteer when that dog Billy was killed. And I don't believe all these animals that are being so-called euthanized. I believe that they are adoptable and treatable. And with so many being labeled rescue only, and you can even see in your own listing of the outcomes, there's literally a handful. There's also very problematic, and I don't know how you can resolve it. I believe there needs to be a third party come in to have arbitration, because you've lost a lot of grid rescues. From my conversations with past rescues, some of them don't even want to deal with ACC anymore. There is a very big problem going on here. And I believe that needs to be resolved, because this is impacting the lives of these animals being saved. We're finding, again, why are so many being, labeled this? It's not working. And it's not working when some rescues tell me they'd rather just not deal with it, pull from elsewhere. Even one of the rescues you have in your presentation aren't even working with you anymore. I don't know what happened. But in my opinion, something needs to be taking place, because you're losing rescues. Rescues are getting fed up. From my understanding, some rescues feel they're not being treated well. I asked before, and even though there's a resistance to it, since there is such a situation now that's critical, it really needs, in my opinion, being open to other 501c3s. Of course, they have to be properly screened. There's a protocol, which is part of a legislation that's being worked on now, shelter animal rescue access. I believe that could be put in place now with, of course, you know, the proper screening and so on, following the policies that are listed in that piece of legislation. Because things are in the situation, I think all stops have to be pulled out. I still don't understand what's holding up things like having running clubs come in and run with the animals to de-stress them. I don't even know if the sound mats ever came in, but there are things that could be done now. I'm not understanding who is holding up not putting the dogs on the emergency placement dogs on the main Facebook page and giving them an equal shot at being saved. So these are a lot of things that some of them are the same. We've asked these before, and this is not fair to a lot of the animals coming in there. They're not getting a fair chance.
Marilyn, that's a lot that you put in there. A lot of what you said doesn't reflect the data that we presented. We've added New Hope partners. You saw from the data how many animals New Hope partners pulled. 2.6 of the shelter euthanasia of dogs was for behavior. I think there's so much that so much of it is so specific. I think what would be best, and we've invited you before to meet with us to go through line by line what you were saying, because so much of it is not supported by what we show. And if we can have that conversation, we would welcome it.
Thanks, Risa. Jane, I tried to unmute you, but I can ask your questions. How will you staff your new Queen shelter when you're having such a hard time staffing existing shelters?
That is a terrific question. We are very hopeful that a new shelter will be a much more attractive place for people to work. We're also looking at our current staffing and holding out that opportunity for anyone who currently works at ACC who might want to work at a new care center. And it is a very, very difficult process. We have added to our recruitment efforts. We added 2 people to just focus in on recruitment. We have a little bit of a delay in how much effort we put toward it at the moment. It's a budget issue of how many more resources we can put toward Queens. But we have in our HR department convened a task force to focus on Queens hiring. But yes, it's an excellent question. It will be a challenge. And that's part of why we are going into the Queens community to work with city council, community boards. We want to be local, and we want to gather people from the community who also are in the job market. So there will be a lot of open houses and a lot of conversation about it.
Risa, someone is asking, the Queen shelter is being built on a toxic piece of land or don't? What are the cleanup efforts that we've been talking about for the past 3 years?
Okay, I think that's a huge overstatement. The property that we purchased went through a thorough environmental assessment, and it was determined that there was some soil contamination and groundwater contamination. The project didn't start immediately because it underwent remediation as part of we worked with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. We have all the papers and the permits required. There will be a continual groundwater monitoring pump on site to ensure that the site is clean. As you know, or you may not know, it was a former auto body shop. So the stuff that was in the groundwater was related to auto parts. We're proud that we participated in this environmental cleanup. we are turning a piece of property that was really an eyesore into something that is safe and healthy for Queens. And we're happy that we're bringing this enhancement to Queens and to that community.
Thanks, Risa. Ellen, you had one thing.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, because there was one specific dog that was brought up, and that was Billy. And that is a dog that pretty severely attacked a member of our staff, that it took multiple staff members to stop the attack. So that is not an animal that was without an incident. And yes, that animal was euthanized, but after that incident had happened. So, and I don't think it's fair to say that we're not giving animals the best shot, because as Risa had gone over, we are offering stipend money, we are utilizing our emergency placement list, and it's been 2.6% of animals that have been euthanized for behavior. We have found placement for an enormous number of animals that had behavioral challenges.
And I just want to add to that, Ellen, that some other new things that we've been doing for the animals that need emergency placement they are now appearing on the general search button. So our website gets about 75,000 visitors a month, and also on the app has been downloaded 10,000 times. So that means that the general public is also seeing the animals that are in need of emergency placement, which is something new, and then they're able to fill out a pre-screener. So we are giving them a lot of exposure. So, okay, I think that's it.
Yeah, and I feel like these public comment sessions are always really important to us on the board, to hear from people who are volunteers, who are close to working with our staff. And sometimes we hear there's some hard stories here, and it's important that we never lose sight of them, and we don't. But I think also, I'm not trying to turn a blind eye, but you need to also look at the very amazing success and placement rates that we're seeing. And again, we're the front line here. We're the open admission shelter. There are everyday challenges, and there are even worse challenges than we've ever had right now too. And again, I appreciate everyone's focus and attention and care and concern about all the animals. And I think we're all unified there. So again, thank you all for attending. I'm really grateful that there are so many people who are so engaged in the work we're doing. And I thank you all for your concern and your help, most of all. And the board, our job isn't done yet today. I know we're way over time, but we do have some important board only meeting issues that we need to take care of in a closed executive session. So I'd like to have us adjourn to that, and I'd need a motion, and we'll take a vote for that. But I'm also, just a matter of housekeeping, each board member has an invitation to that separate meeting. We had planned to start at 11:30, but let's take 15 minutes. And so we'll meet back here 5 minutes to noon, not here, but in the new room that the invitation is sent. So take 15 minutes, and may I have a motion that we move to executive session? All in favor? Again, thank you, Risa. Thank you to your team. Thank you, everyone who came to listen and bring their concerns to us as well. And with that, our public session is adjourned. Thank you.